in mind about that. First of all, we're going to fast forward a little bit from those little babies and those children, and then, of course, they grow up, they become teenagers. So what happens when you and your spouse disagree on discipline?
Studio 5 relationship coach Matt Townsend says discipline does not have to divide you. This is, I think, the one time of all times that parents want to be on the same page.
Yeah, well, you'd think so. But we don't, like the baby showers, they happen, they're nicely well planned. We probably, if we're organizing it, we talk it all out. We figure out exactly what we're going to do with it. But in discipline, we never usually get together until we need it. Like, we didn't ever need to figure out our discipline until our children needed discipline. You know, baby doesn't need discipline. Toddler kind of does. And then all of a sudden, somebody starts disciplining the kid. Like, the dad might start spanking it, and the mother freaks out.
I love how you say it.
Yeah, it. Whatever the child is.
The little baby thing. That little baby with legs and arms and stuff. So we've got to figure this out. Now, here's my belief. This is a huge moment for relationships, because this is the moment we can finally prove we can do something together. You figure out disciplining, or you figure out your biggest issues, and you know what? You've finally accomplished something big. Because now we can figure anything out if we can figure out this discipline issue.
But it makes sense. That would hit you at a moment where I can just see it happening. You look at each other like, what are we going to do?
Yeah. Well, and it all starts so easy. And then the other problem is, once you figured it out, you can't assume it's done, because every kid's different. And every child needs to be kind of disciplined a little bit differently. So, 4 ideas today. And the first one is, we got to get on the same page, okay? Most people do not end up being on the same page when it comes to discipline. In our family, I was pro-spank, because I was spanked, and look how I turned out.
Yeah, look at that. That's a fine model there.
Sorry about that. So don't assume you're on the same page. We've got to get on the same page. My wife was kind of anti-spank, and again, we didn't need it till all of a sudden I thought my daughter needed to be spanked. And so I started going to discipline my daughter in the way I was taught, the proper way. And then my wife wanted to do it in an improper way, and it was driving me nuts. And so,
you know, Marty right now is at home.
She's at home, and we have some kids at home from school. So.
Oh, good.
Love you. But we've got to get on the same page. Now, here's a really interesting thing. Remember, your kids, they're okay dividing you. If they divide you, they might conquer you. In a weird way, they'd love you together on discipline, but as long as you're not, they're going to probably get away with more.
Well, it gives them more power, right?
So you have got to get together on this issue. One of the best ways to do it, I believe, is behind closed doors. We should probably not be arguing out our debate in front of the children. So get together, go get on the same page behind closed doors. Go start talking about how we're going to do this.
Let me ask you, when does that happen? Does that happen when your kids are toddlers before there's any issue, or does it happen when all of a sudden there's an issue that needs to be disciplined?
I think you're eventually going to have to do it in the moment when there's an issue, because I don't know that you can really have a plan until you've both experienced it. Talking about having kids before you've had kids and what you're going to do with your kids is not like real talk. Until you're in the moment and your kid's flipping macaroni across the room, we might not know what we're going to do with them. So it might have to happen. Maybe you can try it up front. Try it once you have the baby. Try it once the baby's a toddler. But eventually go down and sit down and talk.
So you're saying before you disagree, but when you can see the heads are going to clash,
starting to happen,
that's when you say, let's take it another room and talk it out.
Or if you, right in the minute of a disagreement, I would just time it out and say, you know what, let's go to another room and figure this out. And then when we go figure it out, that's the principle number 2, okay? The second rule is we've got to focus on the principles, not the practices. Most discipline is an argument of practice. Spanking is a practice, not spanking is a practice. Timeout is a practice. It's not a principle. So what we end up doing is we argue pro-spank or not spank. The minute you're arguing whether we should spank or not spanking, we're not even talking about the principles. We get so stuck and fixed in our position that we're not even thinking why we spank. So one time, my wife and I, we were at a retreat. I was learning how to do a communication program, and we sat down in the class, and they asked us to talk about a difficult issue. So we were talking about spanking versus not spanking. And I asked my wife, why do you want to not spank? Why don't you want to spank? And she says, because I think the most effective long-term method of discipline is through love, respect, and more natural types of consequences, not through force, fear, and aggression. And it's the first time I've ever heard her talk her principles. And I'm like, whoa. That's brilliant.
Because that was the principle part rather than the practice
I totally
part.
believe in love.
So you hadn't associated spanking with the fierce, the aggression.
And that it wasn't loving and respecting. I never felt love and respect for my kid when I spanked him, but I always felt spanking was okay because that was my practice. Don't argue your practice. You've got to get into the principles behind the practice. So I finally said, I totally agree with you. I believe in love and respect and not force, fear, and aggression. Then she asked this crazy question, which is why she drives me nuts. But she said, so why do you spank then?
Oh.
But then I thought, so my principle behind spanking was I wanted immediacy. I wanted something now. I wanted an impact now. And so we then had to figure out, okay, is there a way we could find a way to have love and respect and not force and fear, but that's immediate? Now once we're talking about our principles, we can go find a brand new practice.
So it's the bigger picture. You're getting on the bigger picture.
When I work with couples, the number one thing we do is quit getting into your position. Your positions don't matter. Figure out what your principles are behind the positions. So that's the second one. Focus on principles, not practices.
That right there is so powerful. I mean, you think that right there could solve a lot of...
Think of that. Think about the wars that have gone on forever because of our practices, not our principles. We all have virtually the same principles. We just never go there and talk about it.
It's that challenge to set aside the practice and focus on the principle.
Right.
Okay, principle number 3.
Third principle is we've got to draw a bigger circle of options. Most of us argue about so few options because we only know a few options to discipline. Our options are spanking or timeout. I mean, seriously, how many more options do you know of? Most people,
Well, and you brought up a good point with that last example between you and Marty, that you reverted to what you knew and how you were raised. Is that an okay way to, okay practice?
Well, think of your only practices you know are the ones you've experienced. So what I'm suggesting is, now that you're starting to understand each other's principles, draw a much bigger circle of what are all of the options. Okay, there's a million options to discipline. You can do the timeout. You can just have consequences. You can have them go sit in their room for an hour. It's meals. You could, whatever. There's a million things you could do. There's shock therapy. There's a million options. And so what I found is,
you can custom build a dungeon like Townsend did in his basement.
Like our basement. It's our food storage room.
Oh, okay.
But there's a million options. But when you only have 2, you're limited to only 2 choices. So the minute you broaden your options, then you've broadened your ability to create new ideas.
And do you get those bigger, wide options by talking, by coming up with ideas?
Books, is that what it is? Go online, go to chat rooms, go to parenting magazines, go to workshops, go to classes, find a parenting coach. There's a million options out there, and just because you don't know them doesn't mean they don't exist. But in reality, they don't exist.
Well, one thing I liked in your notes is you pointed out, find an outside source, not just how I was raised, how you were raised. Find that outside source that you both can come together on.
And then all of a sudden, if you, like when I have people come to me, if they both buy into me and understand me, then when I start giving them suggestions and I hold them accountable, then it becomes, then they can agree to follow Matt. We can agree to follow Matt on this. And then the last rule is just circle back and tie up all the loose ends. Most people I know, when they make a plan together, they never circle back. They never go close the loop and learn. I call them post-mortems, okay? Anytime we've just had an event that didn't go so well, you guys do it every day. You have a post-show meeting where you sit and talk about the show. What worked, what didn't work, where do we need to go? We need to do that after every moment of discipline. If once we've had a disciplinary situation, let's circle back as a couple, maybe when we're going to bed, and let's just talk. And let's talk about what went really well. Honey, I really liked how you handled Josh right there. And let's maybe say, and you know what? When I started yelling at Josh, I felt like I wasn't being respectful, which is against our principles.
The key is probably to be consistent with that.
Consistent. That's the hardest thing. See, most of us just aren't consistent parents. And then all of a sudden, what discipline demands is consistency.
You start off on the same page, and you end up at the end making sure you're on the same page.
We can keep circling back. It's called learning.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Great
Speaking of learning, people can do that at the upcoming date night.
You got to do these date nights. So it's not. This isn't about bad marriages. This is about where you're going to go, strengthen your marriage, get a good workout. Friday, March 12th, we're doing another one from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. It's only $20 a couple. It's at Noah's in South Jordan. You can call 747-2121 and sign up. And then we're doing a different topic every month. So those of you that already been to a date night, call back, and we're doing a series where once a month now, brand new topics to strengthen your marriage.
My friends went last month. They loved it.
Yeah.
I said, don't give him a bigger head than he already has.
Yeah, well, thank you.
We'll have Matt's link on our website as well. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. All right,